I mean, here's the thing. I think it's going to be determined by how many barrels are really seeking to put on the market. I mean, the numbers range so widely. There's some reports that Saudi's looking to put 300 to 500. And then you have Novak out there, the Russian oil minister, talking about 1.5 million. So I think that is really the challenge, is how steady is the supply ramp up going to be? And then, of course, you have the holdouts. You have Venezuela, Iran, and Iraq saying they're not going to sign off on this.
So many questions. One from me is the fact that I've seen various Iranian ministers over the years go into the meeting very hawkish. In fact, one of the traditional hawks as well, way before current events, and talks about sanctions, what have you, only for them to come into line. And I've seen Mr. Zanganeh, the current Iranian minister, do the same on several meetings as well. So the bellicose talk beforehand, will that be replaced by consensus at the meeting? I mean, I think that is certainly what the Secretary General Barkindo hopes for, what UAE's oil minister Marzoui hopes for. But I think one thing to really bear in mind is, Iran is now going into a potentially very strict sanctions regime, and there are certain key OPEC countries that supported those sanctions. So I think that is one of the underlying sources of discontent going into this meeting. Iran could have 400,000 to 500,000 barrels off the market by Q4 of this year because of the new U.S. measures.
Definitely. The Trump angle to this is fascinating. Because it seems to me that the Saudis and the Russians have been able to call the tune here, and then we start to get Trump tweeting again, and then all of a sudden we feel like we're going into a meeting with a shift in attitude.
Well,
so what do you think, how important?
I think it's very important, because remember, in April you had a joint ministerial monitoring committee meeting in Jeddah, and it looked like there was going to be no change in policy. Then all of a sudden you get a Trump tweet blaming OPEC for high oil prices, and all of a sudden come May in St. Petersburg, and you have Al-Fala taking a different line in terms of production. So the question is, how much has U.S. anger over high prices and the Trump administration blaming OPEC caused certain key OPEC states to switch their tune? Now, the Russian oil corporates have long wanted to raise production, but Saudi has seemingly switched in the last couple months.
Do we have any sense that at current prices we are seeing demand destruction?
We don't see any signs of demand destruction yet, but certainly we have strong complaints from consuming countries. Indian oil minister has been out there very strongly saying his high prices are bad for Indian consumers. And one of the problems facing Modi is the subsidy regime has been scaled back in India. So now you have Indian consumers really bearing the brunt of higher prices in a way they hadn't been before when those subsidies were in place.
So, Helima, a lot of people doing a lot of work on working out whether these are high prices or just higher prices as well, because we know we had 149 bucks at the peak of prices. And we had a mean price in 2014, 2011 to 2014, somewhere in the region of 100 to 110 bucks. So for all of those people out there, I would ask them, are these high prices or just higher? And actually, are they very good for those people looking for substitution, good for the renewables industry, and actually quite a fair price for everyone?
I mean, again, one of the things when we talk about sort of $80 as you bring up, we've had higher prices before, and the global economy is strong right now. So the question is this really hurting consumers? But I go back to the issue of in certain key countries, like if you were in India and you basically had high subsidies, the Indian consumer didn't feel it. And I think part of the reason why the Indian government is so strong on this issue is if you roll back those subsidies, the consumer feels it in a way they weren't feeling it before in key places like India. So then they take their anger out on the governments. And we have seen protests in places like Jordan, over Tunisia, over these higher oil prices. In Brazil, we've had protests over higher gasoline prices. So it becomes a political challenge for many consuming countries.
Hey everybody, it's Hadley Gamble from our new CNBC Middle East Bureau in Abu Dhabi. Thanks for stopping by. Now, to watch more, you can try one of the videos that just popped up on your screen. And don't forget to subscribe.